Thank you very much. Mr. President, Mr. High Commissioner, dear colleagues, it is a great honor for me to speak to you today in this special debate on immigration, integration and multi-ethnic dialogue in the OSCE. Let me first of all thank President Eftimiou and the International Secretariat for putting the combined issues of migration and integration on the agenda of our winter meeting. I think there are few issues which so deeply impact the security and the cooperation between our countries. Almost on a daily basis, all of us in our own parliaments deal with the effects of migration movements and the presence of different population groups in our societies. These days, Mr. President, as a result of the events in the Arab world, large groups of people are leaving their countries, trying to find a safe shelter in, very often, countries of the OSCE. I have stressed in our Parliament that we should strengthen the tools we have, like for instance Frontex, to be prepared to deal in a humane way with this situation. Migration influences the development of our economy, the tone of our political debate and the essence of our culture. In short, migration and integration involve the very future of our societies. There are few people who can speak with more authority on integration, national minorities and multi-ethnic dialogue than our own High Commissioner, Mr. Vollebeck. So it is also a privilege for me to share the stage with him this afternoon. Migration and integration, of course, are very different phenomena, driven by different motives and circumstances and requiring different policy approaches. Where migration involves leaving one society to build a better future in another society, integration assumes a decision to build a future in the society where one resides, be it historically or recently, temporarily or permanently. But it is obvious that both phenomena also influence each other. Without a decent and dignified process of migration, a successful process of integration, however one defines it, becomes more difficult. While the lack of prospects for integration might drive people to seek their future in other societies and perhaps become migrants. In any case, as I have stated at last year's Trans-Asian Parliamentarian Forum in Almaty, migration is a fact and it is here to stay. People are increasingly on the move. Our constituencies expect from us, politicians, to deal with the facts and have a long-term view. Therefore, we have an obligation to our voters to design sound policies to deal with migration and not let ourselves be overtaken by the developments. As our Assembly has recognized in last year's Oslo Declaration, migration has both positive and negative aspects. And it therefore requires a balanced, comprehensive and cooperative approach, both in countries of origin and in countries of destination, in order to ensure a decent and dignified process of migration. It is an absolute necessity to regulate migration flows. But it is also inappropriate to label irregular migrations as illegal, since no human being arrives in this world illegally. This balanced approach was at the core of the resolution on migration that we adopted last summer, and I find it important to continue building on this. How do we promote decent and dignified migration? That involves sensible legislation based on data. It involves sensitivity for the gender aspects of migration. It involves a realization of the value of remittances for countries of origin. It involves a profound knowledge of all the aspects of return migration. And it involves prudent integration policies, as in a lot of our countries these policies are often designed specifically with an eye to immigrants. In this framework, I would like to draw our attention once again to the study that the High Commissioner on National Minorities conducted in 2006 at this Assembly's request, initiated by my colleague from Dutch Parliament, Nebahat Al-Bayrak, who was then a member of the Dutch delegation. In conjunction with the Migrant Policy Group, a renowned research institution, the High Commissioner analyzed policies on integration and diversity in some OSCE participating states. Dear colleagues, I would urge you all to read at least the executive summary of this report and to follow very carefully the follow-up to this by the development of guidelines by Mr. Vollebeck and his staff. The High Commissioner's work is conducted mostly through very quiet diplomacy, but it is work of the utmost importance, and I am convinced that these guidelines will prove again the value of this important OSCE institution. I would also like to draw your attention to the crucial work that is being done by the Office of Mr. Goran Svilanovic, the coordinator of OSCE economic and environmental activities. His office's valuable work is currently focusing on providing support to our governments in three main areas. Support to develop and implement comprehensive, effective and gender-sensitive labor migration policies. Secondly, support to improve the collection of comparable data on migration. And thirdly, support to maximize the economic development aspects of migration. Last year, I already told you about the OSCE Guide on Gender-Sensitive Labor Migration Policies and its complementary training tool, the OSCE Trainer's Manual on Gender and Labor Migration that his office published in 2009 and 2010 respectively. Now, just 2 weeks ago, there was the launch here in Vienna of a new tool, the IOM OSCE ILO Handbook on Establishing, here in Vienna, a new tool, the IOM OSCE Trainer's Manual on Labor, Migration Management. This manual complements the OSCE IOM ILO Handbook on Establishing Effective Labor Migration, which you might already be familiar with. As Mr. Goran Svilanovic already mentioned yesterday, this manual responds to the global demand on a comprehensive, interactive, practical and flexible training tool on effective labor migration management. Mr. Svilanovic's office is also working on a promising project together with IOM, which aims at supporting the establishment of harmonized data collection in a special process among Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. The findings of this project will be compiled in a handbook on migration data collection, which will be presented in Vienna in June. We are looking forward to seeing both the findings and recommendation they make, for data collection is extremely important. I have found out that not only the collection of data is important, but also the interpretation of data. Only when we talk about a migrant, in many of our countries, we have a different definition of what a migrant is. And since, dear colleagues, our policies are based on research and data, it is extremely important that we agree and there are no misunderstandings on how we interpret the data that we need to collect. I want to draw your attention to this. As the OSCE Parliamentary Special Representative on Migration, I am personally very thankful for the great work Mr. Svilanovic's office has carried out so far in the area of migration management. And I encourage all of you to take a serious look at the tools they have placed at our disposal. Regarding return migration, I would like to point out the valuable expertise and experience that has been gained by the OSCE office in Yerevan. If one tries to understand how migration flows nowadays continue to be a challenge for our countries and how the OSCE can play a role in this, the OSCE office in Armenia offers a case in point. It is estimated that in the past decade, roughly 230,000 people were involved in external migration processes in Armenia, out of a total population of about 3 million. 94% of the migration flow from the country was made up of labor migrants, who are mainly responsible for return migration. This is a tremendous change from the 1990s, when, due to economic and social dislocation, most Armenian migrants permanently joined the sizable Armenian diaspora in Russia, Ukraine, the USA and Europe, while at the same time the country, as other countries in the Caucasus, had to deal with a sizable influx of refugees from other former USSR countries. For the Armenian government, it was an enormous challenge to adapt its policies to this almost revolutionary transformation of the intensive migration flows which confronted the country, as it would have been for any government. On the 30th of December last year, the Armenian government adopted the concept for the policy of state regulation of migration, an important achievement which shows that this country stands ready to implement what it calls a proactive, foreseeable migration policy. The OSCE's office in Yerevan has provided Armenia's State Migration Service with expertise and advice in the development of this migration management concept paper, and is now preparing to build on this assistance in working on a national plan of action. I intend to visit the OSCE office in Yerevan in May to learn more about the role the OSCE can play in assisting governments with designing modern migration policies. At the annual session, I will report back to you on this. If there is one aspect that has changed about migration flows in the past decade, it is the fact that many people no longer migrate to another country to stay there for the rest of their lives. Often migrants return to where they came from, sometimes because they have to, as a result of asylum policies, sometimes because they want to. In my own country, the Ministry of Justice and the Department of Development Aid work together to develop policies to facilitate this return migration. Return migrants are provided with both financial aid and expertise to give them a better position in their country of origin to, for example, start their own small businesses. Also in the Netherlands, a pilot project is carried out with circular labor migration. This is a triple win concept. A triple win concept promising gains for the host countries, the home countries and the migrants themselves, promising accelerated economic growth, remittances, relative high wages and brain gain by means of full circles of migration. Immigrants should be able to come and go back and come again, with few restrictions and making use of contemporary transnational networks. In this pilot, the Netherlands attracts temporary workers from South Africa and Indonesia, who will learn skills while working in our country, which they will be able to utilize once they have returned to their own countries. The pilot project will provide us with data, which in their turn will help us to develop more far-sighted migration policies. Mr. Chair, I see it as my task as Special Representative on Migration to inform you on what is going on in our countries in this field. I also see it as my obligation to call on you and to call on all of us to develop smart migration policies based on research and comparable data. For migration can be a triple win if we go about smartly with our policy instruments. Let us open up ourselves for this possibility. Let us face these modern challenges. Let us shape our own future. Thank you very much.